Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 15 of the Spice Squadron podcast.
Welcome.
How y'all doing? How you feeling?
I hope you're doing good.
Yeah.
Have you had a tough week?
Have you drunk your water today?
Have you? Have you had a meal? Because you're about to get a meal of delicious spoilers from this week, and you're going to get, in my opinion, the best play style of deck.
So we're continuing to kind of talk about the kind of different archetypes. Last week we talked about control, if you want to go check that out. This week we're going to talk about aggro, kind of
Let's
go! And we're not talking about aggression, the aspect. Well, that does have a lot of tendrils into aggro.
For sure it does.
It is not necessarily the be-all and end-all of aggro.
We're talking about speedy, punch face, get your opponent's base to 0 as quick as you can decks.
Absolutely. But first, we're going to go over a couple of spoilers we've had for this week. First one we're going to be talking about is this Patrolling V-Wing.
Look at this little zoomy guy.
2-cost mono command.
1/1, just a neutral 1/1.
1/1 with the ability, when played, draw a card. Simple, effective. Yeah.
It's an interesting card. I think this card's not bad. I think this is pretty good in a space race deck because it's a turn 1 play that replaces itself. It's not a great trading body, but it's okay if it's a deck that goes face. I would love this card if it was a rebel. I would love it if it was a rebel because you could put it in layer and it would you could use it in layer more. I think this is okay. I will say I think this is pretty cool. I think it's neat. But I do have a feeling that we're going to get another 2-cost fighter that will be a rebel, that will have a similar effect, that will probably replace it. Or at least that's my theory, is we'll definitely see something that will just blow this one out of the water, unfortunately. But I don't think it's a bad card. I just think it's more...
No, I think it's just kind of like one of those cards where it's like, is it bad? No. Is it making it into the deck?
Probably not.
Also probably not. But it's just kind of one of those things. You definitely want this in draft.
Yeah, for sure. This is a great draft piece because just having a card that replaces itself is always good. You don't run out of steam.
Yeah, in draft often you'll run out of steam. Limited, in any limited format, running out of steam is a huge problem. This card is something that kind of circumvents that. I think as we're getting closer and closer and getting more of these cards, green is going to be very formidable in draft and in sealed because of its ability to stay consistent with things like recruit.
Imagine
prepare for
getting
takeoff.
an overwhelming barrage in draft.
It's one of those things where it's I think consistency is so if you get a consistent deck in draft, you're so.
It also has, I'd say in my opinion, I'd probably even say yours, maybe the best base in the game, which is EADU, Energy Conversion Complex. If you pull in that in draft, wow, do you have a leg up?
If you're going to apparently if you're going to a tournament, you're also bringing that.
Wild. A lot of 25 health bases. For those who don't know, there was a really cool community-run tournament online the other week. It was really fun. A lot of people played. Unfortunately, we are in Australia.
And so it started at, I think it started at 4 a.m.
I caught some of the games. There was no 30 health bases, which I personally find really surprising. I know giving yourself all the options is really good. I like 30 health bases. Depending on my deck, I actually rate them higher than 25 health, but that's a conversation for another day. This card is pretty alright. I give it a 2 out of 5 on the Spiceometer. I think it's alright. I think it's middle of the road. I do think that the reason it's not higher is just because something honestly better will come out for Constructed.
Yeah.
In draft, this is good. In Constructed, it's just, there will be something better.
I agree. Until we find something that can kind of buff this up or use this in a different way. If there's something that can, maybe you play this turn 1 and then turn 3 you play down Bright Hope to bounce it back to your hand. Then you play it again and have that as a kind of draw engine that you create for yourself in layer. That could work.
Yeah, I think it's a bit tough just because this card has it doesn't have a lot of relevant keywords. It's just a fighter.
Yeah.
But hopefully we see some fighter support. We saw
vehicle.
We saw fighter vehicle. Yeah, sorry. Hopefully we see some fighter support for vehicles. We saw Taj for troopers, so that'll be interesting. But moving on from this one, we had 2 event reveals, covering off. The first one...
From our lads at the Golden Dice podcast.
Yeah, Golden Dice podcast. Go check them out. Really good content there. First one we'll cover off is definitely an interesting one, but it doesn't have as a unique an effect as the other card that was shown off. Medal Ceremony.
Yeah, really interesting card. Heroism card that's come out.
It's our first zero cost.
Yeah, where the spreadsheet is kind of all over the place. It got thrown out a little bit for a while there, but we're pretty sure we still have like one or two more heroism cards, but we're out of villainy cards to get shown. Like, there's no more space for any more villainy cards.
Just like in general?
In general.
Oh, wow.
But we do have another... Really surprising. Yeah. So, and we do have a couple more heroism cards to go, and this is one of them.
Yeah. It's our first zero cost.
First zero cost card, which is very interesting.
Cool.
It's obviously heroism card. It is an event, and it says you may place up to 3 XP onto... Sorry. Choose up to 3 rebel units that have attacked this turn and give each one an XP counter.
This is Taj. This is General Taj.
Yeah.
For rebels that have attacked, and it's not a body. So, you know, I play Leia, I tap Leia, I swing my arcs, play this, put an experience on each of them. It's definitely an interesting card. I think it's maybe a bit slow. I think the stipulation of like it's being a zero cost is good. That's powerful. I would have been okay with this maybe being a 1 cost or a 2 cost if it let me put them on before I attack. But I guess the difference between this and Taj is Rebel is so much more common and it's a more powerful keyword than Trooper.
Yeah, and it's one of those cases where I think this could be really good as long as you have consistent draw.
Yeah.
Because the main thing this is costing you is a spot in your deck and a card in your hand.
I also think that this card, a lot of the time, costs you the initiative. I think because if you're playing a deck that this runs in, you want to go wide, you want to have a lot of rebels, which means you're swinging a lot, and by the time you and your opponent have done your tit for tat, your action for action, you're at that deciding point where you're looking at your hand and you're going, do I claim or do I meddle ceremony? And depending on your deck, you probably claim there to be able to tap Leia again to get in for the damage.
I think Leia is probably the only deck that can really use this in an effective way.
I think maybe a low ball Luke deck that wants to go slower could also use it because you can swing with your units with shields and then you can buff them so you're not worrying too much. I think your best bets are Luke or Leia with this card, but I don't think every Leia deck. Like, I don't think the yellow-green Leia runs this. I think maybe a blue-green Leia that's slower would run this. I think this is an interesting card. I'm not sold on it.
Yeah, I definitely need to do some testing with this card, kind of check out when it can be used, when it's worth that card in hand.
I just want to know where it fits.
Yeah, I'm sure this card has a spot. It's just, I feel like this is definitely going to come in a more control-y hero deck.
Agree.
That kind of, but
this is a slow card. This isn't. So I think one thing when you see this, you might be like, oh, experience counters, more damage, aggro.
Yeah.
But it's actually a slower, more control-y card. If I'm playing, I probably wouldn't run it in blue-green Luke because that deck's really tight right now. But blue-yellow Luke with a heavy rebel sub theme, I can see myself running this in.
Yeah.
Because you can buff up your Ezras, you can buff up your Kanans, you can, playing this card, shielding them up, and then, because Luke is a deck, like yellow-blue Luke, it definitely, when it plays below the curve, it doesn't really have the initiative. Yeah. And you're okay with that because you've got shields to protect your units, the deck can be really responsive, so it doesn't mind your opponent having the first play, so I can see this being okay where you're like, cool, Fleet Lieutenant, swing my Ezra, pop the shields on the boys, end of turn you've claimed, great. Experience counter on RT, experience counter on R2, Ezra, and Fleet Lieutenant. And that's not bad. That's not bad. I just think it belongs in a slower deck that wants to pace itself and not one that's like, you don't want to be sitting there in an aggro matchup and drawing that card and going, I wish this was a unit.
Yeah, exactly. We do have a contender of what could be the worst out of aspect card.
Do we?
Well, if you'd have to be running villainy for it to be out of aspect, and they don't have any rebels, so
True.
it could be the worst out of
True.
aspect card
True.
that we have so far.
I mean, to even Galactic Ambition paying 9 can play something.
Can play something.
Can play something.
Can do something.
I don't know what you'd
Paying
play.
2 for Metal Ceremony as a villain? Not many rebels, funnily enough.
True. True. You mean I can't run Metal Ceremony in my Rebel Tarkin deck? I would probably give I'd probably give Metal Ceremony maybe like a 2.5 on the Spiceometer. I see it and I know it has potential. I know there's a place for it. I can see this little man's on the street and I'm like, there's a home for you yet, little guy. It's just not with me.
It feels like a card that needs to be solved for in a way.
I feel like maybe something else needs to come out for me to look at this card and go, hey, there we go.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely like I'd build my yellow. I would test this with yellow blue Luke and just like play a slower game. But the problem is I don't know if yellow blue Luke has like a leg to stand on. I mean, green blue's just I find green blue more fun. I know a lot of people do. It's an awesome deck. But if you like yellow blue Luke, test it in there. I know I will. I'll be trying that out to see how it goes. I could, interesting stuff. It's talking about interesting stuff. This game is a worldwide global game. That's one of the things I love about it. I love that we're going to be getting a lot of different. Oh yeah, that's right. I missed a card. Ha 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 ha. We'll go back to that. I bamboozled you. There we go.
Yeah.
It was planned out from the beginning. I bamboozled you all.
I had no idea where you were going.
Bamboozled.
I was bamboozled.
The card Bamboozle from Star Wars Unlimited card game by Fantasy Flight Games.
This is a 2-cost cunning heroism event with some interesting text on it.
And Ashton Kutcher in the art.
People really love to hate on their Han Solo art.
Just Han Solo's got a lot of topsy-turvy art in
Yeah,
this
it's
game.
not consistent.
He looks like a bunch of different actors. Like, the leader looks like Michael Cera, the original 7-cost looks like Willem Dafoe, and now we've got Ashton Kutcher. Sure. I love the art. I love the artist, and I love all the hard work you do, genuinely.
But yeah, so it says you exhaust a unit.
Yep.
And if that unit has any upgrades on it, they are bounced back to hand.
So just like an asteroid sanctuary that can get rid of, instead of giving a shield, it can get rid of a shield. It can be like, oh, nice fallen lightsaber, bounce that back. Nice Jedi lightsaber. I bounce that back.
And it has been confirmed that those token upgrades do not go back to your hand.
Yeah,
they are just removed from the game.
That'd be wild. What would you do with them?
Well, they're 0 costs, technically.
Yeah, I suppose.
So there was the question that came up.
That's true. But I guess that's like that. I think something similar to that happens like Hearthstone, where they can come back. But in most other conventional card games, tokens when removed from an area just so you can do that. You can bounce stuff. You bounce your opponent's Vader's lightsaber for some reason.
Not the best idea, but certainly possible.
The most interesting thing about this card is that, James, you're wrong. It doesn't cost 2. Costs a yellow card in my hand because above that text we just mentioned, Bamboozle says, rather than paying this card's cost, you may discard a cunning card.
Yeah. I believe, at the moment it is believed that, and I could be wrong here, and I could be...
We'll get an official FAQ or something later.
That this does include aspect tax as well, so you're not paying that either. So if you're running a cunning villain
if you want to play a really hardcore Thrawn or Boba lockdown deck with every card that exhausts, you just run this. You can just discard a Greedo. Yeah.
Discard any cunning card and you'll be able to play it for free, even though it's a hero card.
Bamboozle your opponent. They'll see it and be like, I did not. I think this card's definitely going to be. This is a card that I can see and I go, cool. Might not be great this set. Might not be good next set, but I can see this card being good because there will be decks that are like, run those upgrades. We want these upgrades. Run as many as you can. And just being able to go, stop that huge unit, tap it down, and bounce everything back to your hand.
I've definitely seen people talk about this as a sideboard card.
I agree.
Something that's going to be coming in against those upgrade-heavy decks to make sure that they're not able to kind of just Voltron style their like
Red Chili Voltron.
Yeah,
that's a James wishlist deck. I can see this is definitely a solid 2 of in my deck if a tier 1.5 tier 1 upgrade deck comes out, if we get a busted upgrade that I know is super strong, this is a sideboard card. I definitely will, like, if there's a card that's like Han Steel 44 and it's super powerful, and I don't want my opponent to have it on their unit, I'm definitely going to bounce. I definitely consider running this for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of upgrades,
I give this card a 2.5 out of 5 on the Spice Summoner. I give Bamboozle's 2.5 out of 5. Speaking of upgrades,
there is, I believe it is an event in France that's happening at the moment that we're getting some images from. These are confirmed to be like allowed.
These are
spoilers.
Cards.
They're not just
leaks, which is good. We don't want people.
Yeah.
Don't leak the cards. Don't ruin the hype.
Any card that we know is a leak and isn't meant to be out there, we're not going to cover on like when we do these spoiler things, just because they have a plan for when they're spoiling stuff, and they should be able to keep to that.
It kind of ruins the hype when you see something, because I love getting new cards. We love getting new cards. You love getting new cards, but you don't want to run out of cards. Yeah. So as I was saying, we love this game. It's worldwide. One of the best parts about this game is you can get your cards in any language, and I think that's really sweet. So we've seen a French event. I'm really glad that they're showing love to other countries. I think it's really cool. We saw 2 cards. As I said before, we saw Jedi Lightsaber.
Yeah.
How good's that? It's the...
kind of the hero equivalent to Fallen lightsaber, whereas like Luke's lightsaber, Vader's lightsaber, Fallen lightsaber, Jedi lightsaber. It kind of makes sense, and these are kind of like the villain ones are in red, the hero ones are in blue.
And as you'll see, it costs 3. It's a blue hero. It says you can't equip it to a vehicle, and it gives +3/+3 to a unit, just like Fallen Lightsaber. And just like Fallen Lightsaber 2, has an awesome on-attack trigger. Yeah,
very interesting. On attack, the defending unit gets -2/-2 for the attack.
If this lightsaber is equipped to a unit that has the Force subtag.
Yes.
Just like Fallen Lightsaber deals 1 damage to each defending ground unit the defending player controls. If equipped to a Force unit, this does that too. I love this. Like, I really like this.
Yeah, my first thought when doing this is red, blue, Windu with the lightsaber.
Mine was Ezra. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing on Ezra.
Yeah, Windu just being able to -2/-2 and just constantly tap.
Windu, that becomes
himself.
A board wipe, and I think that's so, like, you've won, in my opinion. But I think this is great on Ezra, because Ezra comes out turn 3. This comes out turn 4. Ezra now becomes a 6/7 that when he attacks, you -2/-2 something, so his trading potential is ridiculous. And at the end of that attack, you look at the top card of your deck. And you can play it. This is amazing. And we've got, like, put this on Yoda. Put this on Kanan. Put this on Luke Leader. Like, the thing I love about Blue Hero, or just Hero, is the Force units. Because I love Force units, man. I'm all about it. I got Kanan tattooed my lightsaber. Like, I have the Jedi symbol tattooed on my body forever. I love Jedi. I love lightsabers. I love the Force. It's what these mystical space wizards are genuinely awesome. And I think it's one thing I think right now, Blue Hero has a leg up on villain, or just Hero has a leg up on villain. Villain has Vader, Palpatine, and another card we're going to talk about later, really exciting, Fifth Brother and Grand Inquisitor. And 2 of those are leaders. Whereas Blue's got Kanan, or as it was Hero, has got Kanan, Ezra, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Mace Windu,
Yoda.
They've also got Count Dooku, but Yoda. But like, Hero has a lot more of those lower to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
Units, and this card works really good with those. Put it on Kanan. Make him a 7/8.
7/8, yeah.
Put it on Yoda. Make Yoda a 5/7.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of options with this, which is what you want when you get those upgrades. You want to be able to have multiple opportunities, which is kind of why that kind of Vader's lightsaber, Luke's lightsaber have fallen off a little bit, because we don't have those Luke and Vader units yet.
Please, I can't wait.
Yeah. So having multiple things you can put it on is so important for these upgrades to truly show their true value.
And I mean, you guys know I love lightsabers. We talked about it in like my favorite kinds of cards. You guys know I love it binds all things. We talked about that. I'm just so excited for more of this Force theme to kind of show itself. I think this card's awesome because you can go, hey, nice Viper Probe Droid, swing Ezra into it, it dies immediately. -2, it goes to 0 health, it dies, Ezra's ability resolves, you know, and it's...
That's going to be a question.
Does Ezra's ability trigger after attack? You would declare the attack, because you can just choose how abilities roll, you declare the attack, resolve that one, it dies, the attack then ends, and Ezra... Because he still attacks.
Yeah.
Because in order to get that trigger, you have to declare an attack. So at least that would be my interpretation. I could be wrong, but I think this card's so sweet. I'm like, even putting it on Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Deal with this. Like a 7/9 that when he attacks, he makes you weaker. And then he's a Sentinel. And when he dies, he's going to buff up my other Force units. So when my lightsaber goes on them, they're even better. I think it's so cool. I definitely think Fallen Lightsaber is really good to deal with go wide. And I definitely think Fallen Lightsaber goes face more. But man, do I love Jedi Lightsaber as a card that goes on and just controls and trades. We were just talking about Yellow Blue Luke, and I think this fits perfectly in it.
Yeah, I think this is definitely going to be a card you're going to be seeing as these kind of Force decks, even if maybe there's not enough to quite hit that mark in the first set. As you go forward, you're going to be looking at this card in those Force decks and being like, this is a huge card.
I would consider building a blue-green Hera deck. Yeah. And just being able to run Ezra's and Sabines and like Zebs and Choppers. Ooh, please. When are we going to get
One
the
day
rest
we'll
of
get
the
them.
Spectres? Surely they have to be in this set. I will riot. But I love this. And I'm definitely biased. And I'm giving this like a 4.5 out of 5 on the Spectrometer. I think this card, it's a lightsaber, so it instantly gets a 3. But I actually think that the trading potential on this, I actually think this is better than Fallen Lightsaber, because I think that the trading potential on this card is way better. The -2 can even get around shields too, so even if you're swinging at a unit that has 2 health but it has a shield, still kill it, because the -2 hits it and makes it die. So I love it. I think it's really sweet. I think it's awesome. And I think it fits the theme. The artwork's really nice too. Now, we go on to another blue card.
A more villainous card.
Ooh, villainous. This is definitely a big boy.
Big boy. Everyone was like, we'd seen big ships in green. We'd seen big ships in yellow.
That's it.
But now we got a big ship in blue, baby. We have the Avengers. They're ready to assemble. Yeah, we have Iron Man, Hulk. We have Doctor Strange.
It's not
what?
Not that one.
Oh, sorry. It's a 9-cost spaceship.
Wow. It's what is it, James? Is that what's its keyword? Can you tell me? It's capital ship, baby. It's a capital ship.
I don't know. What is it?
Capital ship. And you know what that means? Because we've got one in yellow, because we've got one in blue, because we've got one in green, we're gonna get one in red.
We might.
Where's Executor? Give me Vader's gigantic flagship. But
calling it now Palpatine's Hera, but with capital ships.
Oh.
Don't pay aspect tax on capital ships.
Wild.
You can play all of them.
It'd be interesting if it was like you don't pay aspect tax on Imperials. Ooh, that would be really cool.
That would be spicy.
But this is a 9-cost 8/8. Some resilient stat line going on there. And I think a trend with a lot of these starships, except for resilient, is they're really easy to remove. They come down, really easy to remove. They come down, and a lot of the time, it's really in range of like Vanquish or Waylay, which doesn't sound like a lot.
Or Devastator.
But considering that it hits itself, but considering that those like yellow is probably the most played color right now, and blue is one of the best colors to run for removal, is a high chance it's going to happen. Now, if you're slamming these cards down against red-green, well, you're having a really good time. But I think a lot of the other ships don't have big immediate effects. I think Devastator does, but only hits one unit. Resilience great because it just stops you from playing events. But this card is when attack / when played, your opponent chooses one non-leader unit and defeats it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a control card. It's one of those cards that you slam down, you swing it base, because if you swing it unit, they're just going to choose that unit to defeat it, so you're not going to get the full effect. You swing it at base, you kill it, they go, which of these units, or usually they only have, like, your optimal thing is they only have one unit on board, and you go, which one are you going to choose?
You're going to pick that one?
That one.
Or just that one. I think one interesting thing, and one card I like to go with this, and I saw some talking about it, is Piet. Pretty sweet with Piet. You play it, untap, ambush, kill something. They're going to pick that unit. Why wouldn't they? But then your Avenger doesn't take damage.
Yeah.
And because you played it and attacked with it, your opponent picks 2 units and kills them. It's pretty sweet. A lot, like, it does require setup, and it requires Piet staying on the board, and as we've discussed earlier, if you see that boy come down...
Yeah, Piet is tough to keep on board because it's just like... Piet is on side.
Piet, you see him, and you know for a fact that your opponent's up to something. I see that card, and I'm like, you, my friend, have bad thoughts, and I'm getting this little guy out of here. But I think it is cool if you can pull it off, and definitely, as James said, this is a control card. If you're able to run this in a deck where you're like, cool, yes, Vanquish and Waylay are a thing, but I'm confidently controlling enough where they aren't going to have it, and even if they do, it doesn't matter, that's okay. And I like this card more a little bit than I like, Chimera and maybe Resilient and even Devastator, because Devastator is solid, but Devastator costs 10, and it's rough, it's great, it's awesome, but it is a bit tough. But I do like when this comes down. If your opponent waylays this, you can keep bringing it back. Same with Devastator. If they both get waylaid, they can keep coming back and stuff like that. 9 is a lot to invest, but, play that card, and it makes your opponent get a little frustrated because you're like, you pick.
Yeah.
And no one wants to make that choice. Like, it's tough when your opponent makes the choice, but in my opinion, it's easier to be like, dang, okay, my opponent made the choice for me, but I knew it was going to happen because this is my best unit, so it was bound to die. I played this unit, it was going to die. My opponent was going to have a way around it. My opponent makes me choose, and then I have to assess on my board. Like, there's pros and cons to it. It might be really good, it might be really bad, depending on the situation, but there's definitely a control card.
Yeah, like, they could play it, and you could be sitting there be like, do I kill my Devastator or my patrolling V-Wing?
Devastator. Because it doesn't draw a card.
Ah, true, yeah.
Because I can Bright Hope it back. Because I'm running Devastator out of aspect.
Great.
I pay 12.
Yeah.
I actually pay 9 for Galactic Ambition. I take. It's my Hera deck. But genuinely, for those out there who want me to say it, is a title for Galactic Ambition. But
there are people.
You are, and if you're watching this, you certainly are a viewer. But I think that this card is a control card. I think the trend with capital ships, especially Star Destroyers, is just they cost a lot, and they do pretty cool stuff if they stay.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things where eventually we're going to see these decks who run like 3 or 4 capital ships just be like, you don't have enough Vanquishers.
I think one tough thing is I don't know if we're going to see them get there. Because there are decks that are like Boba, which has Cunning, which is like, cool, nice capital ships. Tap that one, bounce that one. Or
struggle to bounce them.
Tap, discard.
Yeah.
Or, we see, just an aggro deck where it's like, you're not making it to 9. You're not making it to 6. Like, your Vader leader isn't flipping this game. So I think it'll be interesting to see. And I have hope. I want to see a red one. I think it'd be sweet to see Imperial capital ships in all colors. And I want to see... I want to see them go somewhere, and I hope one day I get to slam one down. I hope someone gets to play one, and it's just not immediately removed. But I think these cards are powerful and they're awesome. But you really got to weigh up where they sit, and I think they belong in specific decks.
Yes.
And I think you need to keep them, not like these aren't a card that you're like, yeah, this is really good, I'll chuck it in. It's definitely a card that you're like, cool. In this deck, I want to do this, I want to control, and I want to include Devastator. And like, it needs to be a starting point. That being said, I do think it's pretty good. I think it's one of the better Star Destroyers. I'll probably give it like a 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
Star Destroyers, Lightsabers, Bamboozles, oh my. We've only got
2 cards left.
2 cards left.
2 cards left to talk about. We'll be moving on to the discussion of aggro.
Woo!
So,
as Plato once said, for those who don't know, Plato won arguments by flexing often until his opponents stopped talking. I respect him as a philosopher and a man.
But yeah, the idea of aggro essentially is just trying to beat your base down before you can really get to the point where you're doing
Nice Star
these
Destroyer,
big
loser.
things.
You're dead.
Yeah. I think the first big aggro deck that we saw in Star Wars Unlimited was that Sabine.
Let's go.
When she came out, especially when
She just flips so early.
Yeah, flips so early, has an ability that just is like,
it is
damage.
aggro.
It's
damage.
damage.
Just aggro. She just wants to get in and she just wants to punch face. She even wants to punch face in multiplayer. Sabine's ready to throw hands against multiple opponents, and they haven't even released the format yet. She didn't hit no bell.
It's really interesting looking at the tournament that came recently.
Certainly was.
For those who hadn't seen it or whatever, there were a lot of Boba decks. The second highest deck was that red-yellow Sabine deck that was coming along.
Jeddah City.
Yeah.
Definitely a choice.
That's a choice.
Definitely a choice.
It's probably the right choice because so many people did it, but
giving yourself options is great. I think a lot of the time with those bases, they are amazing. You definitely get a lot of choices. It's awesome. I think a lot of people do forget to use that ability, and there have definitely been games where I've won because I had an extra 5 health buffer. Like, it wasn't where I was on the edge. Like, I wasn't like at 25 and was like, oh, I would have been dead if it was this. I've definitely had those games, but there have been games where I've got 10 health left as opposed to 5, and I'm not as worried. So I'm like, okay, I'm like not on the clock. I can think about my plays more, because that's one big thing aggro loves, and that's one thing I love when I play aggro decks. People aren't ready most of the time.
Yeah.
They just aren't. Like, even if you know what aggro does, to quote Magic for a moment here, red deck wins, which just means you play all of the red cards, and traditionally those cards deal damage to your opponents directly or have like haste, so they come in ready and can attack on the turn they come in. And it just means you don't need to think too much. You just need to punch. I think the don't need to think too much changes a lot in Star Wars Unlimited, but I do think the core aspect of I'm going to play my burn units, I'm going to play my punch cards, and I'm going to get in there, and my red deck, it's going to win.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of people can actually start to, like, the most common aggro formula is red-yellow. Purely because of that surprise strike, that shoot first.
Surprise strike, shoot first, and like complementary to that, yellow has the best sideboard options in the game.
Yes.
It has Asteroid Sanctuary. It has like a great card that I think is pretty sweet. We were just talking about it before, is Leia in Hero, because she's a body, and that matters. She's an Asteroid Sanctuary, but she can attack. So yeah, you get the control side of tapping your opponent's thing down. More importantly, she gets to attack next turn. She's doing what your deck wants. And like, yellow's just got access to those big cards like Surprise Strike, which is just so good to get in for damage. Like, even if you're running all red and your 6 yellow cards are Surprise Strike and Shoot First, man, you're doing something right. Or, Quick Draw, what is it called? Quick Draw Reflexes?
Quick draw reflexes, exactly.
Yeah.
Snapshot reflexes is the actual card, but
Snapshot reflexes.
yeah, this card is awesome for
Speaking of
aggro
talking
decks.
about it.
It is a 1-cost upgrade, gives +1/+1, and its ability text is simply attached unit may attack. So you tap 1, you attach this to a unit, give it +1/+1, and it attacks in the same action. It's just kind of that, similar to Layer, it's just kind of that action economy. Not necessarily action cheating, you're not getting a free action to whatever you want, but it is action economy where you're kind of putting two things together.
Which we've seen Yellow like a lot. Like,
yes.
Like, this is my, it is like, I know what everyone's thinking out there, this is just worse shoot first. And you're right, it is worse shoot first. But shoot first is amazing. So a worse version is still
really good.
Yeah. So
also the art on it is absolutely beautiful.
Is that Pedro Pascal?
That's him.
So it's our first artwork featuring the Mandalorian, and boy howdy does it live up to the space western vibe. This man is stepping out in dust with his cloak blowing, and he's just
yeah. This is a card that you're hopefully going to see in the gameplay video if you check it out this week. I'll be playing
I hope not.
Full aggro red Han list, which is very interesting.
And I will be playing revisiting Blue Vader because we got a couple of new cards that I'm very excited to talk about. It's one coming up we'll kind of discuss. But this card's awesome. So we know Shoot First is great. If you were to ask me which one I would pick Shoot First. But if I'm building like an aggro, I think I saw someone in the Discord make a really good point of, because someone said, oh, I don't like this is a draft chaff, I just won't run this. And I saw someone say, well, hold on. Yes, this is probably not great in a lot of decks. This is great in aggro, because you're going to run Shoot First anyway, so why wouldn't you just run 3 more copies of Shoot First? Because in aggro, a lot of the time you're not caring if your unit's trading up. You just want to get in.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, you'll kill stuff when you really need to with Shoot First, but, like, I don't mind just having this to be like, cool, here's an extra damage with my Sabine. Here's an extra damage with my Fighters for Freedom. Here's an extra damage with my Rogue Operative. Like,
yeah, and also health points are huge in this game. Yeah. If you go from 4 to 5, that takes out open fire. If you go from 5 to 6, that takes out takedown. It's a really cool card just to be able to, if you're on those thresholds, bumping above them can be huge. I'm going first. I'm versing blue. They probably have takedown. Snapshot reflexes is someone up. Boss. No, not Bosk, because Bosk. Oh no, Bosk is 4/5. Bosk. Swing in with Bosk.
He's a 5/6.
And now he's a 5/6 out of takedown range. And suddenly that takedown in my opponent's hand is not as useful. They have to rethink their whole turn just because I've been able to snap up on, and I've already gotten, even if they have a vanquish then, I already got that value from Bosk. I've already got that swing in.
I love it. Now this card leads me to want to talk about that action economy. Aggro works different in Star Wars Unlimited. It works so different, and the reason I think, and I'll say it, I've played them, you've played them. Most of the time, aggro decks are what's considered brain dead, or one deck that is just, it just does one thing really good, and it's one thing that doesn't really take a lot of thought. It's just, I'm gonna hit you till you're dead. It's a simple, effective strategy, and that can frustrate people because I know there are people out there who love playing stimulating decks that make them think, and sometimes you just want to come home after work or go to locals after work and just play a deck where you don't really have to think. You just want to swing. I think that's pretty sweet too, and I think whilst you can still do that in Star Wars Unlimited, it adds a little bit more complexity to aggro, which I, as an aggro player, value, because I also like playing, like, stimulating decks. Aggro is my favorite playstyle, but I do tend to play mid-range more, because I like to have those options and everything, but if you give me a good aggro deck, I'm going to play it. I love it, it's so fun, and I think that this card's really good, because action for action inherently makes the game more responsive.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key things about aggro is knowing your sequencing.
Yeah.
Knowing what to swing with first, where to swing it, whether you have time to play something before you swing, or whether you have to swing immediately for less value. There is all these kind of points where your sequencing of your plays is so important on whether you can get the win or not, especially against some of the more kind of control-y matchups like that, like Thrawn or a Green Vader or something like that.
Monoboba. And I think usually there are definitely a lot of decks that have that aggro sequencing in other games, but most of them don't.
Yeah.
And I really value that this game does have that, and it makes you can play your aggro deck, but I like that it adds another dynamic to the game that makes it more interesting and exciting to play your aggro deck, where your opponent has a chance to respond, and you betcha they will. And that's why I think stuff like Snapshot Reflexes is awesome, because it's just, I do this, and I can attack in the same action, which means I'm closer to claiming first, which means I'm closer to attacking again.
Yeah. And I think nowhere is it more clear that you need to be focusing on sequencing and deciding on sequencing than Grand Inquisitor. I think that is one leader that has been overlooked.
I like this leader. You loved it when
I love Grand Inquisitor. I think he's going to be incredible.
I do as well.
And I think people are sleeping on him in a way that it just takes a lot of sequencing, like knowing your sequencing and knowing what you can get away with. Because as soon as it's a deck where you really want to hide your intentions for as long as possible.
And then your opponent claims and you're just getting in there. Can you remind me, what was on our wish list for card types? I think there was Force units.
Yeah,
there was some Imperial Red units.
Something for Grand Inquisitor.
We definitely wanted low-cost villain Force units. Did we say
Inquisitors?
We did.
Fifth Brother.
Here he is!
Oh, it's so good. It's good in Vader,
awesome.
And it's good, just good in Grand Inquisitor.
This is good. This is a awesome red villain card, and my God, does it have 3 incredibly good keywords. Inquisitor, which we haven't seen a lot of support yet for, but Imperial and Force on a 3 cost. Hello, 1 cost Force choke early in the game.
So early in the game for a 1 cost Force choke. Yep.
So quickly. The artwork on this is amazing. His sub name is Fear Hunter. He's a 3 cost red villain, 3/4. With
this ability gets raid 1 for each point of damage on this unit. So essentially it is a grit that isn't grit. So the reason behind this, and I've had a few people ask me, why isn't it just grit? Because of Grand Inquisitor.
Grand Inquisitor, he synergizes with it.
So grit would have increased his attack over the threshold that we could get untapped. But with Grand Inquisitor, you will still be able to get that untapped.
Which is so good.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Incredible. And that's not even all. He has another ability where, and I always remember the first part of the ability. I always forget the second part of the ability. Because on attack, you may put 1 damage counter on this unit and deal 1 damage to a ground unit.
Enemy ground unit. Wow. Okay. So you're telling me on attack, it becomes a 3/3 straight away?
Yep, 3/4.
Swing,
3.
pink one. But it can remove shields. It can get Fallen Lightsaber and attack going wide for dealing a bunch of damage everywhere, giving it more health. You can run It Binds All Things with it to swing, untap it with the Inquisitor, heal all that damage, deal that damage. You can run Force Choke at 1 as early as turn 3. I love this. We know that I love Force. We know that I love lightsabers. I literally said it earlier in this episode. I love It Binds All Things. Blue Red Inquisitor looks so fun if this is where the cards keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can only imagine that we're now, before it was like, oh, we might be getting 5th Brother, 7th Sister. Now we're pretty certain that we're going to be getting 7th Sister as well.
I would be so surprised if we didn't see, the Grand Inquisitor, 7th Sister, and 5th Brother, because they were the 3 named Inquisitors introduced in Star Wars Rebels, the best Star Wars media out there. And I think that it's so exciting, and I thought it's so cool, and I love how it works. And this is what James was talking about. Sequencing is really important, because how this card and a blue red in Grand Inquisitor deck opens up so many avenues.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just so much you can do with it, so much that you can work with, so much really interesting plays that you can now come along with. And I think that as we get more cards revealed, the Seventh Sister probably being a more tricky version of, if I had to guess, of this rather than a straight full damage version.
All I want is another cheap Force unit for
yeah,
That's
and
all I want.
I think this, like, I already have a mono red Grand Inquisitor deck that goes hard with this new card, and it just hits like a truck. I know a lot of people are thinking of that blue Inquisitor or yellow Inquisitor. I've been really on these mono decks recently.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So I really enjoy the mono Vader. I have a mono Krennic deck that I'm really enjoying.
Oh no, not the mono Krennic.
I think this mono like the card aggression is so good for this as well, because it has the same sort of thing.
Again.
Yeah, it has the same sort of thing where it's the next turn you could be like, if you leave Fifth Brother one turn, Grand Inquisitor could get 3 swings out of him in one turn.
Swing, untap him, swing, untap him, swing. Like this and what that's like. That's like nearly 10 damage.
Yeah.
That's like 7 or 8 damage in one turn. Pretty powerful. I think my favorite villain color combination, personally, is blue-red. I love access to... It binds all things. I love access to Force Choke. I love access to Takedown, Vanquish, Cloud City Wingguard. All that good stuff. And they just made it better.
Yeah, absolutely. This fifth brother is an amazing addition to any red villain deck, and I think that's we're gonna be seeing a lot of play with him.
If you're running a red villain deck, and like run it in Tarkin, because every turn you can put a 1/1 counter on him, and his raid just gets bigger because you can attack, ping the 1 counter negates it. He just gets stronger and stronger because he's an Imperial, guys. Like, put your counters on him, run him in Tarkin Troopers as just a solid 3-drop. You know, you're running him in Krennic because the deck wants to synergize with damage units. So it just gets damaged and it gets bigger. And he just hits all of the things that red values and villain values. And it ties it together so neatly. That makes me so excited to see what the other Inquisitor, Seventh Sister, is going to do. And if we get more, I mean, my personal wish list is Seventh Sister and then a Grand Inquisitor unit. I'd love to see that. Fingers crossed. I mean, I'm pretty certain we're going to see Seventh Sister. I'd love it. But at least the Grand Inquisitor unit's on my wish list. But this card's so sweet. It loves to punch. It loves to go hard. And it loves to be aggressive. It's got raid on it to deal damage to base. It's got ping effects. This card exemplifies aggro in the sense that I play this. You're dead or I'm dead.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a card that is extremely hard to leave alone. You gotta trade into it. You gotta try and get rid of it, because if you leave it alone, there's just so many shenanigans they can pull off with it. And that is one of those really interesting things. We're talking about aggro, how it can be this really simple kind of mindset. But with these cards like Fifth Brother, I feel like Star Wars Unlimited is really taking aggro into that realm where it's not brain dead. It is
direction.
Yeah, it's making aggro decks have to think really hard about what they're doing, what their sequencing is, making sure that they're not falling into these control players like laps on hitting every single like breakpoint of their removal, and trying to know when maybe this turn I'm not going to ping 1 damage onto my Fifth Brother, because it is a May ability.
I like this card's so sweet because it's one of those cards where it's tough to justify removing. Like, you know, your opponent goes, you know, if I swing into it and it doesn't die, it's just bigger. It's like the Chewy leader. And I think it exemplifies that. As I just said, red likes to do 2 big things: kill your opponent or die trying. And it expends all of its resources to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All of them. Like, red's one thing that aggro decks usually struggle with is refilling their hand, and they can run out of gas because they use it so quick. They go in and just absolutely hammer hard so quickly and do all of that damage so quickly, and then, you know, you either find all your resources spent, you die, or your opponent's just dead before they even knew it. So, and I think this card really exemplifies that, where it literally damages itself to damage your opponent. Hey, you're gonna die or I'm gonna die. Let's fight this out.
Yeah, and that's just really awesome. And even on the kind of aggression hero side, it's the same sort of thing with Sabine. It's like, I'm going to deal 1 damage to your base, and I'm going to deal 1 damage to my base. But tell you what, I'm going to be doing more base to your base than more damage to your base. More damage to your base than you're doing to mine. So I'm happy with that trade-off. I'm happy to take 1 damage to my base to do 1 damage to your base, because I'm staring you dead in the eyes and going, try and stop me.
Yeah. I think both of these cards we talked about, Snapshot Reflexes and Fifth Brother, are awesome. I think both of them are collectively amazing. I think Snapshot Reflexes is a bit underrated. I personally would give Snapshot Reflexes like a 3.5 out of 5. I give Fifth Brother a 5 out of 5. Wow. I think he hits that. I think he lives up to his name of being the fifth. And I think that he does so much. He's such an interesting unit. He works with so many decks.
Yeah.
And he is good in them. And he poses a lot of interesting scenarios, like, Fifth Brother has 2 damage on it. Is it worth me trading into him and losing this unit? Do I want to take the 4 damage? Can I afford to use an open fire? Like, it puts your opponent in tricky situations where the easy answer is, yeah, sure, but I'm not playing a game right now and I don't have these decisions to make. What if my opponent has an Emperor's Royal Guard and a Fifth Brother on board? That is a tough choice as to what I'm killing.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there is the other side of the argument of, why is it raid, not grit? Where grit would technically be better for swinging into and clearing it away, whereas the raid, they don't have that if you're swinging into it to clear it away. The raid makes it an interesting and
versatile card that, in my opinion, and I know you agree with this as well, makes it more usable than it having grit. It adds more complexity. It's usable with more cards. Imagine if we see another card in the future because I feel like we will see them, that untaps units with low power or untaps your red units. Yeah. Well, boy, how do you better believe Fifth Brother is the target for that?
Oh, absolutely.
Especially if he gets a Fallen Lightsaber on him, especially if he gets just, you know, he's got damage on him, I'm swinging in, it binds all things, kill that thing. You should have killed him when you had the chance, because now he's back, and my Grand Inquisitor's tapping to ping him for 2 to untap him. You know, it binds all things to kill your unit. You just took 4-5 damage, and I just untapped him to deal another 5 damage and kill your unit. Yeah. And that happened like that. Like,
and that's the kind of things that can happen if you let this Grand Inquisitor deck kind of stall a little bit, and you go, oh, okay, I think their turn's pretty much over.
And then you claim.
I claim, and you've left too many resources to the Grand Inquisitor player. He's just going to run wild with it. And that's kind of what we were talking about.
10 damage in a turn from Fifth Brother? Common. Easy to do.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where it's like, you gotta be prepared for aggro. You gotta understand not only they're swinging at my face, they're going to be swinging at my face, but how they're doing it, what cards they need to play to do it. And these are all really important things when playing against an aggro deck, where it might be really easy to discount it as, they just did too much damage. It's like, how can you disrupt that sequencing that they're doing?
Sure.
How can you make sure that you're knowing what when to use removal, when the right time to use that removal is, because there's definitely times when you're playing that aggro deck where they use the removal and you go, awesome, that wasn't really the unit that I was planning, that was just another unit that I had out.
It adds complexity for both sides in aggro and the other archetypes, and I love it. And there's every time I think about Fifth Brother or any other card, mainly like Fifth Brother just really has added a new dimension. Like I think about this card and I'm like, cool, you claimed, awesome. Well, I've swung 5 damage this turn at you with Fifth Brother, or you know, whatnot. Fallen Lightsaber. Tap my leader. Ping him for 2. Untap him. You know, get in there. Like that kind of shenanigans. Or, you know, ping him for 2 first, untap him, then Fallen Lightsaber him. And you've just claimed, and you just have to sit there and watch this happen. As Fifth Brother, you know, in that same turn, he's, you know, swung at you for like 4 damage, and then he's been pinged for 2 and he's untapping. You're like, oh man, I can't take like 11 damage, and then they Fallen Lightsaber him, and you take like 15 damage in one turn, and suddenly your 25 health base is down to 10, and you look at your yellow Jeddah City and you go, why -4, -0?
Yeah, I think it's one of those cases where the meta right now, as we see in that tournament, is that 25 health base. I think as these aggro decks continue to come online, and yes, Sabine is a aggro deck. It is not the fastest aggro deck.
And Sabine's not even finished yet. We like, to put it in perspective, we've seen a whole lot of cards. There's 110 left. There's 110. And if even 3 of them are good red hero low-cost aggro cards, Sabine's quicker, and Sabine's way quicker than you thought she was originally. Look at this card. Fifth Brother came out, and he's one card, and he's already made a lot of red villain decks way quicker than they were before.
I think it's going to make running those 25 health bases
a big choice.
Especially when I see... I watched a bunch of those games, and them using that Jeddah City, I didn't think it was worth 5 health.
I don't think it's worth the action.
And often it came across as, I have a 29 health base, and most of the time it was used on 3 damage units. Like, it was used a lot on the Boba unit, and being like, well, I take 3 damage off it.
I'd rather just run Dagobah Swamp and name Boba with Regional Governor than I would play Jeddah City.
Different colors, but...
Well, that's you know what I mean. Like, I think Jeddah City is awesome on paper, but as I said when it came out, it's a 29 health base. That's all it is. It's maybe even less depending on the units you're using it on, and it takes a whole action. Whereas if you had have just had a 30 health base, it doesn't matter if they swing at you, and you can then kind of counterplay that by taking the action you would have taken and maybe getting ahead and claiming, and then having more to do.
I think, especially in those Sabine decks that are damaging their own base as well. I found
that's not saying Jeddah City's bad either. That's just saying in aggro, I don't think it's the choice. I think the 30 health is the play.
Yeah. And when you're seeing all these 25 health bases, that aggro deck is going to be huge.
As an aggro player, I'm just one step closer to victory. You've dealt 5 damage to yourself before I even started the game.
I started the game against someone. They put down the energy conversion lab, and I said, "All right, I'll go first, and I'll deal 5 damage to you." And they went, "What?" And I'm like, I was like, "Well, it's 25 health base."
25 health base. You take 5.
Take 5 immediately.
And it's a good feeling. I definitely think it'll become more of a choice, because right now, with the limited meta that we've got, and the meta right now is slow and heavily removal based.
Yeah.
I definitely think that when we see that faster, snappier, aggressive meta, that those 25 health bases are definitely going to be a choice, and the fact that you can't sideboard bases is going to make it a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just one of those things where I think at the moment people might be like, I get the energy conversion lab.
Oh yeah, that's the best base.
That is a very good base.
That's the best base in the game.
Tarkin Town I understand, but I'm always skeptical on.
I like Tarkin Town in Vader because Vader has an easy way to do its ability, and I've seen a lot of people say, Tarkin Town makes me feel like it's a bit rough because it is hard to get that ability off, and I honestly, fair enough, I sympathize with that. I like it in Vader, I don't like it too much in other decks. I think Energy Conversion Lab is the best base in the game. I think it's a 5 out of 5 because of the amount of wacky plays it can pull off for the decks it belongs in. But the others, I definitely think you should consider, what your deck wants to do before you just slot it in there because it's there.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, a lot of people like these 25 health bases.
Yeah, go hand.
We could be wrong. We could be absolutely wrong, and these 25 health bases are the only way to go, and they will be, because I've seen a lot of people talking about after the thing that tournaments are just going to be 25 health bases. Constructed is just going to be 25 health bases. Maybe they're correct. I think both of us personally think it's going to start, like the Neil's going to start flipping back to kind of that more.
I think when we get more cards revealed, because again, 110 cards left. That's a lot. That will just change the game. Everyone knows if you play any card game, one card can come out and change your meta completely. So we've got 110 of them, and I guarantee you there's going to be more than one card that changes what our current meta is, and I'm excited. And I definitely think as the game progresses, we may see the needle go back and forth a little bit, depending on how it goes. But I personally think it's probably going to settle in the middle, where some decks value using those 25 health bases because you can make the most out of it, and other decks go, I would rather have that 5 health because I have a bad matchup in aggro and stuff like that. So, but I think, any final thoughts?
I think that's all we have time for today.
It's a bit of a longer episode, but I think we kind of covered off aggro well. Next week, I think it's next week?
Yeah, next week we have the constructed gameplay happening for the Fantasy Flight stream, which is going to be very interesting. I think they're just going to be building 2 constructed decks and playing against each other,
super
which
excited.
is going to be really exciting.
A bunch of cool cards.
Yeah, but other than that, thank you guys very much.
Yes.
Go
check out the gameplay.
and subscribe.
Bye.
Bye.